Hey, welcome back to Connection Point Studies. We're in week 3, the last week of this series, and we hope you're enjoying this series. But today, we're getting close to Christmas time, and we have a good warm-up question for you. So let's give them the warm-up question.
We do. The warm-up question is this, what is a Christmas tradition that your family does?
Now, before you come back, we also want you to read some passage of Scripture, Hosea 2, verse 14 through Hosea 3, verse 2. So as you get ready for the study, you'll read that. All right, so Alex, you've got some traditions in your family. Everyone likes to create their own traditions. You have little kids. You have some cool things, right?
Well, I'm like most families, married families. We've got two families. So we have one here in Seattle, and then we also have one in Montana. So every other year we do Christmas every other year. So this is that every other year, and being that we work Christmas Eve all the way up till Christmas morning, my kids are lucky enough to get in the car around 6:30 in the morning, and we drive 13 hours on Christmas Day to Montana.
Really? Good for you. That's
so
awesome.
We spend the great day in the car, but family is important. We do a lot of stuff with our family. So.
And you know, it's the same for us. Christmas is a time where we give of ourselves over and over again. So we're usually exhausted by Christmas Day. And here's my deal. With my kids, I used to make them wait till noon to open their presents because we did get up and I'd be tired and I think anticipation's better than anything. So we just wait all the way till noon. So those are good memories, good times. Hopefully people had a chance to share a little bit. Now you've read this whole passage, which is a powerful passage. And then we want you to refocus on some of these verses and begin to dig into this passage. So let's do that.
So for our first question, the chapter 2 holds multiple statements about what God is planning on doing. Now, why does God plan on doing so much?
This is a very, very interesting passage, and he does have this great plan. And to me, it helps me to see all the detail in the Old Testament of what God has in mind for the people of Israel, to think about the detail he has from my life too. But how would you answer that question?
Well, I mean, it really shows just how invested God is in his people. I mean, just of how much he is and how he is, what he has done. It's no different than how a parent is of what the ends of what we will do to help them. And it kind of shows a little bit about that.
Behind the scenes even, stuff all the time. Yeah. Pretty amazing thought. Now we'll want them to dig a little bit further and specifically look at verse 17 of chapter 2. Let's give them that question.
Right, so verse 17. So what are the different names of Baal? And does the names of Baal mean anything today? And if so, how?
This is a very, very interesting passage, Alex, and to me, Hosea and this whole passage and what we've been studying has talked about how they have attached themselves to other gods, and the other gods in the area. Baal was kind of an overarching theme, and underneath him was a whole series of God, and they had different forms of worship. One of the forms of worship, they would actually take their young boys and they would roll them down this trough into a calf that was burning, and they would sacrifice these kids. It was just an unbelievable experience. And then they would have these huge sexual orgies, and then there was also a practice to where they would actually give their daughters into prostitute for the temple. So they would be hired by the temple, or they would give their daughters and sacrifice. So when it talks about this other religion, you have to understand their unfaithfulness was so distasteful to God that he had to do something about it. And so let's think about it a little bit in our society today. How are we like that, Alex?
Well, I mean, you look at the priorities of where even we put life in and how we do things. And I think that sometimes I don't think those acts the acts that we do today within our circles of the church world are seen as detestable, but I think they can be. I mean, they really are, even though we might not, oh, well, and that could be, I mean, look at the way where we place God, at the importance of our life and the priorities of where he is and what we put in front of it, sports, money. And then there is the pornography, there is the adultery, there is all of that can go along with it. Now, we aren't doing the child sacrifices, but yet the other stuff is just as detestable.
And it seems like we sacrifice our children to the wrong things from time to time. But this is not about anyone else except ourselves and whether or not we're faithful to God. That's really about them being faithful to God. Now, we want to dig a little bit deeper in verse 23, I believe.
Right, yeah, verse 23. So what does this say about God?
So hopefully you had a chance to really think about that. I think the answer is fairly obvious, Alex, in that I think it tells us that God has better plans for us. I mean, we may have made a mess of our life, but he's got these plans to make us his people again. He's got his plans to redeem us, and that's really what this story is all about. It's a powerful story.
It is. It talks about restoration a little bit for you. I mean, these are people that have been exiled, that have been, you're out, in human perspective, and just showing really God's unfailing love for them.
And it's true in my heart too. God's redeemed me and helped restore me as well, which kind of brings us to the last passage here that we want to look at, chapter 3, verse 1.
Chapter 3, verse 1. Why does this verse relate to people today, and what does it mean to us today?
So, chapter 3, verse 1 says, "Go and buy her back." This is such a great thought. I think every one of us at some point have this unfaithfulness that we have to be honest about. And the fact that we've sold ourselves into idolatry at some level. And God comes and he buys us back. That's such a great story. It's my story. I don't know how I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, no, I mean it's our story. I mean, it's if you haven't experienced that yet, then I really encourage just to be open about that with your group. I mean, the purpose of our groups is not just to sit around and just to answer questions, but we ask these questions at the beginning and the end to break the ice a little bit, but to get to know each other, and hopefully you do grow with that and grow with each other, and you can begin to kind of really share about how God's working in your life and how you were broken before, how he's restored you, and what he's doing today for you.
So which brings us to the last question, which is an application question. That's something we want everyone to answer. Let's give that to them.
Who do you need to love again?
This is such a great application question because it's not only how we've experienced love, but how we need to give this redemptive love to. And I've experienced that love, and I know you have. Hopefully you get a chance to share as a whole group, thinking about somebody who's been waiting to hear from you to share your love. So I encourage you to do that. And then we will see you after the break, after Christmas, after New Year's, and we'll see you again at Connection Point Studies.